What's up everybody, I'm Seth Fowler and today I'm reviewing one of my most anticipated sneaker releases of the entire year. And surprisingly, it's a pair of Vapormaxes, the Nike Vapormax 2020 Flyknit. The Nike Air Vapormax 2020 is the latest Vapormax iteration from Nike, and it's the first real overhaul of the silhouette since it first released. The release of the Vapormax 2020 was originally supposed to coincide with the 2020 Olympics. However, with this global pandemic going on, the Olympics have been moved back and Nike still had to release the 2020. The first colorway of the Nike Air Vapormax 2020 ended up releasing on July 23rd in the United States for a retail price of $220. And if you decide you want to grab a pair for yourself, I've left an affiliate link to Nike in the top of the description. If you've been watching my channel for the last couple years, you know that I've never really been a huge fan of the Vapormax. And that's not because I don't like what it's trying to do. I love the idea of having a full-length air unit on the outsole. I just didn't like the way it looked, and I really hated the way it felt on foot. That's not to say it wasn't a comfortable shoe, because it absolutely was. The problem that I had with it personally was that it was never stable for me. I always found myself kind of falling over or rolling my ankle in the shoe. And I think there were a lot of things that contributed to that happening on the shoe, but the biggest problem for me was the air unit in the heel. It always just felt too big and too unstable, and there was always an area on the medial side of the shoe where my heel would kind of compress the air too much, and that's when it would start to roll. It's possible that the way that I walk is off. Maybe I have a different stance than other people do, which I don't think is the case, but that instability in the heel always made me walk in the shoe funny because I was always kind of overcompensating for the fact that I just couldn't put my foot down too hard in that portion of the shoe. So I always found that my legs would be aching after I wore the shoe for a while, and it was just never really a truly comfortable experience. I had no problem with the Flyknit upper, and the idea of the air unit was still great, but it just didn't work for me. But this year with the Vapormax 2020, not only has Nike focused on sustainability and recycling old materials, they've also redesigned the air unit, and I've got to say, I actually really like the way that it feels now. And genuinely, for the first time, I think I have a pair of Vapormaxes that I'm actually going to keep longer than a couple weeks because I've had like 10 pairs and I haven't kept any of them. In addition to the functional overhaul of this shoe, another thing that I love about the Nike Vapormax 2020 is the fact that it's made up of like 50% recycled materials. In a lot of ways, this shoe could be grouped in with the Nike Space Hippie collection, whose whole purpose was sustainability. Everything from the Flyknit upper, which uses recycled yarns, to the air unit, which uses 75% recycled TPU, this entire shoe is focused on sustainability. And that fact becomes even more apparent when you take a look at the box. The natural cardboard Vapormax box is an obvious departure from the design language from previous Vapormax boxes, and I'm here for it. I think it looks great. And not only does the box actually look more recycled, Nike makes sure that you know that this is a recycled box and that everything about this product is recycled, with all the paragraphs around the box itself. I guess you can't really blame them because it is really good marketing. The top of the box says, "Move to Zero is Nike's journey toward zero carbon and zero waste to help protect the future of sport." And then on the front of the box, you've got a paragraph that says, "This product is made with at least 50% recycled content by weight, which reduces waste and our carbon footprint." And then of course, they've got a similar sentence on the back of the box, actually in a ton of different languages, just to make sure that you know that Nike is focusing on sustainability. Again, it's a great marketing ploy, and you can't be mad at Nike for doing that. Not only that, but when you take a look inside the box, you'll notice that there isn't actually any paper. When you get the shoes, it's just the shoes inside the box. Yes, they have some paper inside so that they keep their shape, but there's no paper wrapping them up like most other pairs of shoes. That's definitely a detail that I don't miss, and I think it probably does save a bunch of paper for Nike. And then wrapping up the box on one end, you've got the size tag that comes in black that says Air Vapormax 2020 FK, which stands for Flyknit, and the official colorway, which is Pure Platinum Black Multi. And then rounding off the size tag, of course, you've got the suggested retail price, which is $220. But getting to the shoes themselves, I think it's obvious that this shoe has a very striking design language, and that's actually the first thing that caught my eye, the way that the sneaker looked. The sneaker definitely looks nuts. It's a very out there looking shoe, but that's what I like about it. I don't love every out there looking shoe, but when a shoe is done right and a shoe looks this good, I gotta pick it up. As I mentioned before, the Flyknit upper actually incorporates recycled polyester yarn, which I think is really cool. And to be honest with you, I think this multicolor upper actually contributes to the recycled look of the shoe, and I think there's a reason that this is the first colorway to come out, because it really does look like a recycled sneaker. The base color of the upper is a light gray that you can sort of see some multicolor speckling throughout, and then in the center of the upper you've got pinks, oranges, yellows, greens, and blues. Something that I just noticed is that the toe of the shoe is the most multicolored part of the entire sneaker. If you look at the lateral side of the midfoot, you've only really got oranges, yellows, and blues, and if you look at the medial side of the midfoot, you've only really got greens and pinks, whereas when you get to the toe, it incorporates all the colors into one area. That's a very subtle detail, but one that I just kind of wanted to point out because I thought it was pretty interesting. On the lateral side of the shoe, you've got your Nike swoosh embroidered in black, and it comes in this very interesting, almost fingerprint looking pattern. I'm not totally sure why they didn't make it a solid Nike swoosh, but I'm not mad at it, and to be honest, it does make the shoe look more recycled because it looks like it's more cobbled together. The medial side of the midfoot, though, is kind of plain, and I kind of wish they had put some sort of small Nike swoosh or some design detail just to break up this kind of boring Flyknit texture. Just my own opinion, though, not a big deal. You're not even going to really notice this when you're wearing the shoe. Even though the Flyknit incorporates recycled materials, I do have to say that it feels really good on foot. It's super soft, it still gives you a lot of support, and it's very stretchy. And to be honest with you, the Flyknit on this shoe is one of my favorite parts of the sneaker, and I'm glad they decided to go with Flyknit that incorporates a little bit of recycled materials, rather than going with that new knit that they used on the Space Hippies that's primarily made up of recycled materials, because this still has a lot of the same features that we know and love about Flyknit, whereas those knits just feel really stiff. Continuing up on the shoe, you get to one of the most interesting details on the Vapormax 2020s and one of the largest changes from any of the previous models, the FlyEase system. Obviously on the 2020, Nike opted not to use a standard lacing system and instead use a modified FlyEase sort of fast fit lacing system, which actually works surprisingly well. I've never really been a fan of Nike's fast fit lacing system, which first debuted on the Air Jordan 33s, and to be honest with you, it seems very similar to this system. The problem that I had with that is that it never really felt like your foot was getting locked down into the shoe, but if you were ever able to lock your foot into the shoe, it was really difficult to get your foot out of the shoe because the pull tab wouldn't always loosen the lacing system. Not only that, but the lacing wires that they use seem really flimsy and like they wouldn't last that long, and to be honest with you, I never had a pair long enough to really find out because I was just never really a fan of the way it felt on foot. This new version seems to be an updated version of Fast Fit that they're calling FlyEase, which is also another Nike technology which seems to be a little bit different than this technology. The idea behind FlyEase sneakers was to make a shoe that was a lot easier for people who were disabled to actually get their foot into the shoe, and from what I can tell on previous FlyEase sneakers, that was just like a strap or something that you could pull back on the sneaker to easily slide your foot in. This one, on the other hand, seems to be a new lacing system altogether. So the way that this FlyEase system works is you slide your foot into the shoe and then you pull this lock pull strap on the heel of the shoe. That tightens these little wires and this locking mechanism on the tongue of the shoe. And to be fair, the actual lockdown on the shoe is surprisingly decent. It's definitely better than any of the other fast fit shoes that I've ever worn. The Kobe's, the Jordans, this one feels the best. Actually, even the Space Hippies for that matter. I did not like the fast fit on that shoe either. Then when you decide you want to get out of the shoe, you pull this release tab on the top of the tongue. Now what I like about this FlyEase system over any of the previous fast fit systems is that it gives you an audible click when you loosen the shoes. Now I know that might not seem like a huge deal, but on all the previous fast fit shoes, there was no way to really know if the shoe was completely loosened, so sometimes you try and take the shoe off and it just wouldn't come off. With that click and this new locking mechanism, you know when the shoe is loosened, so you know when to take your shoe off. Also, on a personal note, I like that you can see the whole locking mechanism through this semi-translucent plastic on the top. I think that's pretty cool because you see when the shoe's actually unlocking. One gripe that I've had in the couple days that I've actually owned this shoe is that the locking mechanism seems a little fragile, like the top of it already seems like it's popping off. And that's really the whole thing that scares me about this shoe. Yes, FlyEase is great. I love the fact that they're making this shoe more accessible for people with disabilities. However, if you're buying this shoe, you have to realize that if this breaks, you can't put new laces on. That's it, the shoe's done. So while I think it's great that there's a FlyEase option, and while it actually wows a lot of your friends, like I was wearing this shoe outside yesterday and a bunch of my friends came up and were like, that's super cool that you just pull the back and it tightens the shoe. While all that's awesome, I wish that there was a standard option in addition to this shoe that you could just have standard laces with. Because I really hate the idea of spending $220 on a pair of shoes just to have them break on you a couple weeks or a couple months down the road. Granted, I don't know the durability of this shoe because I've only had it for a couple days, but I'm just really skeptical about this lacing system and how long it can really last. Maybe that's just me. Maybe this shoe will last for years and I'm just completely wrong about it and they did a great job with durability. But I don't know, I have no idea, and from what I've seen so far, I'm not totally convinced. But since we're talking about the lacing mechanism on the shoe, let's talk about sizing. I'm a size 9, I bought a size 9, and I'm really happy with the fit. I didn't have any issues whatsoever. However, if you do have a wider foot, I might suggest going up half a size because it did feel like it could possibly get narrow. I will say though that Nike is usually pretty good about making sure that their shoes do run true to size, and so if you go true to size, I think you might be okay. What I would suggest though, if you've ever worn a pair of Vapormaxes before, go with your same Vapormax sizing because the overall fit felt pretty similar to previous Vapormaxes. However, as I always suggest, if you have the chance to try this shoe on first before you buy it, make sure to do that to make sure you're grabbing the right size for you. But let me talk a little bit more about the lacing system. Design-wise, I love the way it looks. I love the fact that the pull tab on the tongue says release, and I love the fact that the pull tab on the heel says lock, and it's this really beefy pull tab that you never feel like you're gonna break. I'm gonna be honest, I don't love the color scheme. It definitely stands out though, which was probably the point. I'm just not a huge fan of purple and pink together mixed with a weird sort of yellowy green with an embossed lock text in, I guess, a marbled gray. It just seems like such a weird combination of colors. It is, however, pretty satisfying to pull this lock tab. I actually really like doing that. The tongue of the shoe, which you can barely see underneath the Nike FlyEase system, seems to be padded with reused Nike foams, which I actually think gives it a really cool marbled look. Inside the shoe, you've got this white mesh sock liner, which has some decent padding around the heel and actually locks you down really nicely. The removable sock liner of the shoe comes in this really interesting neon green foam that has a speckled texture, which leads you to believe that it has been recycled in some way. And then rounding off the insole, you've also got the Nike Check pinwheel printed on the heel in black. Comfort-wise, the upper is great. I had no problems with it whatsoever. The padding on the heel was really nice, the lockdown was decent, and the Flyknit felt really good against my foot. Continuing back on the shoe towards the heel, you get to this fuse overlay, which creates a nice dividing line between the Flyknit and also the TPU heel counter. Speaking of the TPU heel counter, it comes in this marbled blue and orange look. There's nothing on the Nike website that says really anything about the heel counter itself and if it's recycled in any way, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was, and I also wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. I just have no definitive answer for you. And then moving around to the heel of the shoe, you've got this locking pull tab, which I mentioned earlier, and you've also got this vertical yellow pull tab, which helps you pull the shoe onto your foot. And then finally, rounding off the heel, you've got the Vapormax text debossed into the heel counter and the Nike swoosh embossed out of it on the medial side. Moving downwards, you get to one of the largest changes on the shoe and one of my favorite details overall, and that's the new Vapormax midsole. From the side view, the midsole looks pretty similar to previous Vapormaxes except for the fact that a couple of the air units have been combined. It's still translucent rubber, you can still see through it, and it still kind of looks like a mouth guard. But from wearing the shoe over the last couple days, I've got to say that they have made some noticeable improvements when it comes to comfort and stability. Not only that, but material-wise, the midsole has changed as well. Apparently, this midsole is now made up of 75% recycled TPU. But for me, the thing that I think made the largest functional change was the way that they had changed the pattern of the air units. And not only that, I could be a little bit off base about this, but it does seem like they've actually shortened the height of the air unit so you don't feel like you're riding up as high. What I love about this new air unit configuration is that more of the area on the bottom of your foot is now covered, so that there's less area that doesn't have anything underneath it. Not only that, but there also doesn't seem like there's as many ridges or areas that your foot can get caught on stairs, which you wouldn't think is a problem, but when you actually wear the Vapormaxes and go up and down stairs a lot, it's something that you notice, which to be honest is a little bit scary, and that could just be because I'm very clumsy, but I also think it has something to do with the old outsole. It just always seemed to catch. This new configuration provides more underfoot support, less areas that things can get caught when you're walking, and also it's a little bit lower so you don't feel as high up, which in turn means that you feel more stable. It's also very possible that they just increase the PSI of the vapor inside the air unit so that it doesn't squish as much when you're walking, so in turn you don't feel as unstable. Whatever the reason for the increased stability in the Vapormax 2020, I'm all about it, and I'm really happy that they finally updated this midsole. Now I will say that it's not as soft as previous Vapormax midsoles, but I'd much rather have a more stable shoe than a cushier shoe underfoot. That's not to say that it isn't soft though, it still feels like you're walking on an air unit, but it's nowhere near as soft as something like React or Boost. And then finally rounding off the shoe on the outsole, you've got these 3 extra pieces of rubber that act as reinforcement that come in 3 different colors: pink, green, and yellow, and they all feature Nike Grind. These reinforcing rubber panels are there for durability. They act as an extra layer of defense against where your foot rubs the most. The Nike Air Vapormax 2020 is a welcome improvement over any of the previous Vapormaxes and is by far my favorite Vapormax ever made. I love the way this sneaker looks. I think this insane design style is really cool. The only thing that I would change about this sneaker is the FlyEase system. It's not that I don't want the FlyEase system to be available and for people to have the option to buy this version of the shoe. I just wish that Nike had also released a version of the shoe that had standard lacing. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, maybe a couple months down the road, they do end up doing that, but right now, this is the only option, and I wish we had standard laces. From a performance point of view, I don't know if this is the kind of shoe that you'd ever want to run in. Maybe you could wear it to the gym and wear it in sort of sport-like activities, but this is not a shoe that I would go for like a couple mile run in. It just doesn't seem like the kind of sneaker that would be good for that. If you're grabbing this shoe for purely lifestyle wear, I think this is a great sneaker to grab, albeit it is kind of expensive. Once again, if you want to grab a pair of the Nike Air Vapormax 2020 Flyknits for yourself, I've left an affiliate link in the top of the description. But with that, we wrap up the video for today. Now, I would love to know your thoughts on the Nike Vapormax 2020 and whether you grabbed a pair for yourself or whether you're planning to grab a pair for yourself. So let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.